Well, the border crisis is emerging as the #1 issue for voters in 2024, even topping the economy, jobs, healthcare, and even crime. Recent polling shows 35% of voters put immigration at the top of their list of concerns. Inflation was a close second with 32%. And while And while the White House is convinced that abortion is the top issue that will motivate voters in November, the numbers show Americans are troubled by what's happening at the border, and maybe rightfully so. The number of illegal immigrants who have crossed the border since Biden took office just topped 9 million. At least 340 of them were on the terror watch list, and that's just who were stopped, okay? That doesn't include the estimated 1.8 million gotaways. But Biden's problems don't just start and stop at the border. Many in Washington believe the mass migration stems at least in part from Biden's economic and trade policy failures in Latin America. My next guest is the former U.S. ambassador to the Organization of American States under President Trump, Carlos Trujillo. Carlos, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How have the policies and actions of the Biden administration affected Latin America, in your opinion?
Well, they've been disastrous, and I think the outcome of these poor policies are the migratory flows that we're seeing right now. Two of the greatest policies in the Trump administration were the third country safe agreements and the Remain in Mexico policy, both which were summarily dismissed upon the Biden administration taking office. Also, the policies of encouraging illegal immigration by affording them housing, affording them health insurance, affording them gift cards has only further exacerbated the crisis.
I mean, you work closely with President Trump. What would a second term for President Trump mean for Latin America?
Well, I think a lot of the migrants we're seeing are not even coming from Central America. A lot of them are coming from Venezuela. A lot of Haitians who've been patriated in Chile are coming now, that have been patriated in Brazil for a long period of time are coming now. So I think the #1 message is we have a border and we are a sovereign country. You're not allowed to come to the United States at your own free will. I think that's going to be the starting message from the Trump administration, and also having real border enforcement and real border security, and working with our southern partners in Mexico, in Guatemala, in El Salvador, in Honduras to really stop the migratory flows heading north. What we've seen, as you saw in your previous segment, the border czar, Kamala Harris, has not even spent any time visiting any of these countries, working with their leaders, or putting forth tangible solutions that could help keep our country safe.
Yeah, Carlos, do you think that the Biden administration is just not communicating with Latin America?
I don't think they have an interest to really solve the problem. And to solve the problem, you really have to send high-level leadership to spend time in the region and really start sending the message, not through public announcement ads, as they've done in the region, but really by actions of saying we're not a free, open society or an open border, that you could come here at your will. We're a country of laws. We have the rule of law. We have our own sovereignty, and we're going to enforce our laws in this country. But what we've seen, it's the total or incomplete opposite, leading to the collapse of, unfortunately, a lot of American cities and the loss of American lives through fentanyl, through human trafficking, and through all the other crimes that are being committed through our southern border.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of these illegals having zero respect for our law enforcement, for our rules, our laws. Zero.
Well, and I think you have to really consider the person who's being trafficked. I think a lot of times they think that it's compassion, right? We're showing compassion by allowing people to violate our laws. But when you spend time with a child who's been trafficked, or a woman who's been trafficked, who's come through our country illegally, who's been sold into slavery, who's been sold into doing all sorts of horrible things to their soul, to their body, to their minds, I don't think any single person would wish that in their worst enemy. And I think these policies of acquiescing to open borders further encourage the trafficking of women, the trafficking of children, the organized criminal cartels who benefit from that, and some very dangerous people sneaking across the southern border and carrying fentanyl, cutting arms, and capable of all sorts of crimes.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because the Biden administration always talks about orderly and humane. There's nothing humane about trafficking women. I mean, we've seen, I forget what they call them, the trees where the underwear is hanging there. I mean, we've heard stories about what happens to women.
Yeah, and you see what happens to children. If
yeah,
you really
and children as well.
Really care about these people, you spend time. And I've had the opportunity to spend some time with them. And you ask them, would you do this again? And unequivocally, the answer is no. So we're encouraging these cartels to recruit and traffic these women and these children in order to carry drugs, to carry arms, to carry all sorts of terrible items across our borders. And ultimately, when these women get here, they have to pay that debt. And that debt's paid by their skin, by their soul. And I think it's something we really have to take into account, that these people aren't coming, on the magic school bus and being dropped off at Disney World. they're being trafficked by coyotes, raped along the way, and then sold into prostitution and slavery in our country.
Yeah, and the cartels are winning in all of this. I got to ask you this. We continue to see China's influence expand in Latin America. Do you see this as a problem?
I think it's an absolute problem for our national security. If you see China's influence, even with military cooperation in Cuba, just 90 miles of our southern border, their trade advantage in the entire southern cone of the United States, including with Brazil, the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world, I think it's a huge problem to have such a strong Chinese influence, which we know destroys the rule of law and attacks democracy in our own hemisphere.
I want to ask you this. Speaking of Latin America, what do you think of Javier Milei's big win in Argentina?
I was down there actually for his swearing in, and it was absolutely incredible. And just in 1 month since President Milei has taken office, it's the first time in 12 years that they have a surplus in their budget.
Wow.
And so his 1 month of trajectory has been exceptional. I think there's a resounding support from the Argentine people for change, for free market economics, for some different trajectory led by a more conservative coalition has resulted in the economic outcomes that they've celebrated just 30 days into his job.
That's incredible. I've spoken to people who live in Argentina who say, listen, we had nothing to lose because the way things were going.
Yeah, I was down there and people would change money daily. Just think of the fact that you would change money in the morning and then again in the afternoon because the currency devaluation was so significant that the paper was absolutely worthless.
Wow, it's incredible to hear what you just said 30 days in. Carlos Trujillo, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.